Thank you everyone for coming. So this week is our 12th week by Henok Assefa by This week's focus is your startup investable? So this week and then where we have invited the founder and managing partner of Precise Consultancy. So we're going to go through it like we normally do. So I'm your host for the day, Henok Assefa. So tell us a little bit about you. Since you know about me, we should know about you. Tell us about your personal growth in life as detailed as you can.
እሺ እንዴት አመሻችሁ? ደህና ናችሁ? አረ እኔ ሳይደክመኝ እናንተ ሊደክማችሁ? ቡና ጠጥቼ ነው የመጣሁት። ዳስ ማይ ትሪክ። እናንተ ቡና በተጠጡ ጥሩ ነው። እንዴት አመሻችሁ? ማች በተር። እሺ እንግዲህ ጉራማይሌ ቀላቀላለሁ። አላረዝምባችሁም። you said in detail ግን I think most of the detail is probably boring ለእናንተ። ስለኔ ልትሰሙ የመጣችሁ አይመስለኝም። You're probably entrepreneurs with big ambitions who want to change the world and you want to dialogue about that. So እኔ ያው ሄኖክ እባላለሁኝ። I was born in Addis. I grew up partly in Addis and partly in New York. And I studied economics. I went to college as an engineering and engineering and physics major. And I walked into one economics class and basically and ever since then, because some of us want to make a difference in this world, and especially where we come from, especially in Ethiopia and within the broader African continent. And you get the sense that some of those answers are going to be in economics and entrepreneurship. በዛ ምክንያት ነው ሜጀር ያደረኩት economics. Essentially, I see myself as an entrepreneur, as a cheerleader for other entrepreneurs, also a bit as an advisor. So as an entrepreneur, you know already some of the things. I am the founder of Precise and a few other companies. As an investor, I've invested in a number of ventures. So I started out with sort of real world, old economy kind of businesses like agribusiness, transport, wholesale, retail trade, and that sort of stuff first. Construction and real estate. I've invested in real estate in Ethiopia, but also abroad. That is probably my biggest investment so far. And then I moved into angel investing as a part of the Addis Ababa Angels. We were quite active for a few years, and አሁን ትንሽ slow down አለ። ነገር ግን probably up to 10 investments I've made either by myself or in partnership with others. And the last couple of months, we've been setting up a company called African Renaissance Partners. So it's an upgrade from angels. So we've started investing as a VC. The VC focusing on the Horn of Africa. The idea is that the economic transformation this region needs is going to come from entrepreneurs. We know all of you guys are out there, but the risk capital that's required to help you grow is not there. Basically, that's me in a nutshell. I'm an entrepreneur and investor and cheerleader for entrepreneurs.
Mentioned በተደረገው አንድ ኢኮኖሚክስ ክላስ ነው የሚሆነው የጀመረው I think. So I'm curious ምን ትምህርት እየተሰጠ እንደነበረ in that particular class. Number one, I'm very curious. Number two, ደግሞ journey ሲጀምር from that one economics class into Precise, into Addis Ababa Angels, አሁን mention የተደረገው the new VC venture, እነሱ tell us about the progress of the story.
Yeah, quite simple actually. I was good in math and engineering and physics kind of stuff, so I thought I wanted to do it for life. When I went into college, it felt like I couldn't do that as a living, even though I liked the concept. I continue to like the concept. I still read books on physics and then nagaruj, but I couldn't see that as something I want to do for a living. My economics class, it was it's been so long, since I left college. አንዳንዶቻችሁ ላልትወለዱ ሁሉ ትችላላችሁ። ምንድነው ኤሌክቲቭ እና ምንድነው ግድ mandatory. So it was international economics class. It was an Indian professor. You could hardly make out what he was saying, but he was brilliant whenever you understood what he was saying. His name was Parantap Basu. I still remember even his name. And he started to explain what I started hearing in the news. News is a malakat. They talk about economy, inflation, job creation, all of that. And for the first time, I found somebody who was explaining that to me. That's where my interest went to. When I left Ethiopia, I left at the end of Derg as a young boy. And it was a miserable time. If you guys think we're in a tough time right now, and we sure are, but back then it was even, but I'm gloomy, dark time. And if you grew up in that time, I'm sure much like the way you guys grew up, የሆነ ቁጭት ይዟቸው የምትነሱትና I have to do something. እንደዚህ ተጨማልከንማ እንኖር ሁልጊዜ ብለሽ ታስቢያለሽና so when I went to the US, everything I looked at, I thought of it as, can I do something with it back home? I never saw myself staying in the US. I always saw myself as a transitory kind of life in America. የሆነ ነገር አድርጌ የሆነ ነገር ተምሬ ተመልሼ እመጣለሁ የሚል ነገር ነው የነበረኝ. And if you ask some of my non-Ethiopian classmates, basically አንድ ብቻ ነው አበሻ የነበረው. They all are amazed by the fact that I am doing exactly what I said I would do when they first met me in high school, when they first met me in college. And now that's really how it started. And ever since that, to be honest, my fascination with business and entrepreneurs goes way back before that, and it goes back to my mother. My mother was an entrepreneur from the day my consciousness of her started. She's always running businesses, smaller or larger. She's 84 years old right now. She still probably has more energy than I do. And God bless her, but she's the one who introduced me to business and entrepreneurship. I saw her creating value. I saw her creating jobs. I saw her building a country at a smaller level. And I always wondered, how come none of our policymakers see that as much as I see that? That's how you build a country, one step at a time.
So shout out to all the mothers out there, because that's important. አሁን ሜንሽን ከተደረገው slowly grow አደረገ your interests, and the companies meant to, and you're aware that startups are out there looking for people like you. So እነሱ approach ሲያደርጓችሁ, what do you look at? Do you look at the business plan, and if so, what do you look for in the business plan? Or ሌላ ነገር የምታይ ከሆነ ደግሞ what do you look for?
Yeah, so let me talk from the point of view of ARP now, because that's the vehicle, ARP, African Renaissance Partners. It's a $10 million US-based, Delaware-based investment fund. Fundraising un alcharrasnum gana. So what we're looking for is, again, entrepreneurs with ideas that can solve problems. That can solve problems in Ethiopia, that can solve problems across the broader Horn of Africa. I mentioned earlier, there's so many entrepreneurs trying to do these things, but not being supported. And one of the biggest gaps is risk capital. What do I mean by risk capital? It's, early stage enterprises are very risky, as you all know. And you need flexible capital that's willing to take as much risk with you as much as you're taking with your life on that business. Now, within Ethiopia or the Horn, it's basically nothing. I think you've seen the statistics out there. Kenya got $1.1 billion last year. How much did we get? Somebody help? 6 million. Yeah. We're not even in the same continent. So that's what we're trying to change. What do we look for? I think this is early stage investments, so it's not like private equity. You're not looking for 3 years audited statement, history, none of that stuff. So the biggest issue, again, 2 or 3 things. There's so many things. So to summarize, maybe if you guys have questions, I'll get into more details. Most important thing is your idea. What is that idea? How does that solve a problem? So it has to be a big problem. You have to understand how venture capital works. Venture capital works on the concept of the power law. It invests in a lot of risky enterprises. It expects most of them to go bust. Most of you will not make it. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's okay. It makes you jagna. Some of you will make it. So the business model works on the assumption that a lot of them will go belly up. A handful of them will hit the ball out of the park. So it's a search looking for those that will go out of the park. So what's the investor looking for? Investor is looking for real problem solving, real world problem solving business. Not perception, not a feeling, real world stuff. Is it big enough? Is it a problem that when you solve it, you can build a scalable, large business in it? What is the business model? Is it actionable? Is it the kind of business that builds efficiency over time? It's tech enabled. Again, other investors might have different points of view. KARP point of view. Is it tech enabled? Meaning, technology enable scalable business model, not requiring a lot of investment for it to grow. Okay, that's a critical requirement. So your idea has to be sound, your idea has to make sense. Second one I would say is the team. Again, this could even be before the idea, to be honest with you. I don't know if any of you have read the book Good to Great or Built to Last. These are very good books that I recommend you guys read. These are basically, the books are written based on a study of so many successful enterprises, trying to understand what made them successful. And it goes back to who your team is. Who are you? Who is the entrepreneurs? You have entrepreneurial personality. Do you have the tendency to be a risk taker? Do you have experience and track record accomplishing things? Here's where some of you younger ones are going to go into trouble. Again, I want to have a frank conversation. I want to be very blunt. I would love to see some, this fantasy about young kids coming out of college and starting this Mark Zuckerberg kind of multi-billion-dollar business. It happens, but it usually doesn't happen. It requires experience. It requires a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, a lot of network, a lot of skills to get things moving as it is, because our country is still trying to believe in entrepreneurs, trying to believe in businesses, and there is still a way to go. So ይህን ሁሉ overcome የሚያደርግ team ያስፈልጋል. Individual is not enough. Team with complementary skills. Someone who can run the business, someone perhaps who can, execute things. My personal preference is 3 kinds of skills. Someone that's the face of the enterprise, who leads, overall guides, attracts really good talent, has the capability to attract and retain people, good people. That's important. Without people, you can't do much. We need somebody also who can execute behind that person. Useful, but I'm useful. The third person, obviously, we're talking about tech-enabled businesses. That's going to require some technological expertise. Now, some startups outsource that. Personally, I prefer if the tech person is also within the company. So it allows for a lot of problem solving and learning as the business grows. So I'd say the idea, the team, and then lastly, probably increasingly for us, what's important is traction. Do you have traction? Do you have customers? Do you have some revenue being generated? It's not, it's important to show that somebody at the early stage is willing to pay for whatever it is you're producing. ባትሪውን ጨረስኩት already.
ይጠፋል መሀል ላይ ግን እንጮክፋል።
So yeah, it's an indication of future success that people are already willing to pay for your services. I often say business is the best democracy out there because you vote with your wallet. If the customers like what you're doing better than your competitors, they will give you their hard-earned money. በህግ 18 ዓመት ስለሞላኝ ሲቲዝን መብቴ ነው ብዬ ለዛውም መሰለፍ አልፈልግም ብዬ እየተንጨረጨርኩ ምናምን ባለት የሚሰጠው ምናምን አይደለም። hard-earned money ነውና it's a bigger democracy. It forces you to solve a real-world problem for people out there. If you don't do that, you don't succeed. So traction ለኛ shows us that there is some early possibilities of growth. We're early stage investors. Obviously, as the business grows, you are less and less risky, but you're also more and more expensive. That's kind of how it works. So that's what we look for. I'm sorry, I think አረዘምኩት መሰለኝ።
ሳይንስ ኤግዛክትሊ የተፈለገ ስለሆነ የተመጣ ያለው አሁን እነዚህ ጥሩ ጎኖች ናቸው የሚፈለጉት ነገሮች። ሶ ሬድ ፍላጎች ደግሞ አሉ ብዙ ይሄ ነገር አይመስልም የሚያስብሉ ነገሮች። ሶ what are those?
Sure. Let's get the obvious ones out the way. Dishonest people, ውሸታሞች. You know, የኛ ሀገር የሚገርመው እሱ ነው። People think business is about lying, cheating. In reality, it's very hard to work with a lot of other people. Unfortunately, እኛ ሀገር መንግስትና ነጋዴ ድብብቆሽ ይጫወት ነው የሚለው በትረስት ስለማይጀምር ሰው በመሸዋወድ ስለሚሄድ ግን that's the biggest issue. If you can't trust someone you're going to do business with, that's a deal breaker. You won't even look at anything, right? So እንደዚህ አይነት ኢሹዎች አሉ። Company that a startup that is not owned by its founders, mostly by its founders. If you give out too much of your equity, then that's a red flag. The people running the business have to have enough stake in the business. We have to be aligned on the direction we need. As an investor, I'm not going to be there doing the work. Maybe advise, maybe board like support, coaching, maybe helping with the network, whatsoever. Running the business, that passion, that hard work that's going to require in business successful Lamarak has to come from the founders of the startup. And those people have to have enough stake in the business. I see sometimes startups with 7% some silent partner ነው። It's ጆሮ ይዘጋል መስማት አቆማለሁ immediately. Don't do that. Let me be a little bit more controversial. Donor man. I see so many startups even as a mark of as a badge of honor ነው የዶነር ሎጎ የምታስቀምጡት. And it's again, I'm not as a religion I'm not against it. But ለኔ it's a word of caution. There is two things there. አንደኛ your business should not require too much donor funding to get off the ground. If it does, what it tells me is the traction on the ground is not so good. በጣም compelling የሆነ ቢዝነስ ከሆነ compelling በሆነ መንገድ ኤክሴኪዩት እያደረጋችሁት ከሆነ እና ክላይንቱ ከስተመሩ በደንብ ኢንጌጅድ ከሆነ you should be able to do this without the donor. Now I concede የሚያስፈልግበት አካባቢ ሊኖር ይችላል። So አንደኛው ኢንዲኬሽን ነው። So if I see too much donor involvement, caution. ለኔ it's not the same for everybody. ለኔ that's what I see. The second, the bigger issue here is distraction. Precise has been around for 16 years. We work with development partners, all 16 of them. I know how that industry works just as much as anyone else. And what I'll tell you is a startup with a passion to solve a real world problem will be diverted to start writing reports for a donor instead of looking at the market, because harder winning the wallet of the customer than the wallet of the donor. So Lene, that's a word of caution. Where a donor is helpful, Lene, is when the donor is helping to bridge a gap that's only meant to take you across the river on the other side, and you take off, the business takes off. In that case, it might be good. It might be good. Let me be on the record view. It's controversial. A lot of people don't believe in that. And again, I wouldn't tell you not to take relatively easy money. Relatively, I say. It's not always that easy either. But remember, in business, you can only worship one God, and that's your customer. You exist to serve a customer, and that customer you have to know inside out, and you have to serve better in quality, in price, or service, or whatever it is, than your competitors. The more you take your eyes off of that and you pay attention to other stakeholders, that's called diversion. That's called distraction. And the most important thing you need to learn when you build a business is focus. If you're not focused and if you're looking at 5, 6 different things, you're not likely to succeed, which means I'm not interested to invest. Why? I don't know how many of you understand venture capital model. I'm not investing just my money this time. I'm investing other people's money. There are investors called LPs, or limited partners, whose money I'm investing into startups. I am accountable to them. That money, I cannot write a report like a donor and give it back and say, like a nice sounding report, which we are good at writing, consultantage. And the LP is not going to be happy. If they invested $1 million, they want $2 million back. A report and $300,000 is not going to do it in Yaga. So I would say watch out for that. There's probably a few other, red flags. Business models are important. Smaller and smaller issues like asset-heavy businesses, Lenya specifically. The potential growth also. We're not looking for a company that's going to grow slow. That you will sense from the mentality of the entrepreneurs as well. I mean, hey, regularly over the next 10 years, we're gonna grow 10% a year aynet business, which you won't get past the third slide because the power law we have a very short timeline for returning the money back to the investors. 4 to 7 years is what venture capitalists in general look for. Not a fast-growing business model, and it can be done. We've seen it everywhere, right? Even in difficult environments like in Ethiopia, it can be done. 10 years ago, there was no unicorns in India. India, 1.4 billion people, no unicorns. India is also a relatively difficult place to do business. Now there's 140 or something like that. Within Africa, also, there's a growing number. The only region that's not coming up with unicorns is the Horn. The Horn of Africa is dormant. We're seeing it in South Africa. We're seeing a lot of Nigerian, West African ones. Of course, Kenya, their unicorns are popping up and others are on their way to unicorn status. Let me stop there. I think it would be nice to hear from questions later on as well, so I don't want to finish all the time.
ስለ ሆርን ኦፍ አፍሪካ ካወራን ወደ ራሳችን ስንመጣ አሁን የኢትዮጵያን ኢንቨስትመንት ኢኮሲስተም ካልቸር ኦር ደግሞ ያሉት the players on the board, what does it look like?
I've been around long enough, so there's the good news and the bad news. The good news is when I first moved here and now, it's a massive difference. It's just positive, incredibly positive. When I moved here, this is not possible. You know why? People have never heard of startups. People have never heard of investments. People have only know banks, by the way. As recently as 10 years ago, I sat on a board with a bank president who had no idea what equity investments was. Conceptually, what Ethiopia is በሯን ዘግታ ወደ ውጭ ማታይ ሀገር ናት። ዓለም ላይ ምን እየተፈጸመ እንዳለ ኦብሊቪየስ ዓለም ላይ ያሉትም እኛ ጋር እንዲመጡ አንፈልግም። ምክንያቱም apparently ሌሎቹ አያውቁትም፣ እኛ የምናውቀው በጣም ብዙ የተከበረ ወርቅ አለ እኛ ሀገር ውስጥ እና ኖ እነሱማ ከገቡ ይዘርፉናል። ስለዚህ አንከፍትም ብለን ተቀምጠናል እና what that does is it has unfortunately had the negative effect of not allowing us to work, to learn. Young people coming out of college, high school, ብዙዎቻችሁ እኔ ኬንያ ስሄዳውን I mean, I can tell you, I was telling somebody earlier today, KPMG እና Deloitte office, I've gone so many times in Nairobi. Building ሙሉ young Kenyans ናቸው. Getting exposure, how to work for a multinational, how to advise multinationals, all of that. በጣም ነው የሚያስቀናኝ. We don't get to do all of that. Economic growth ማለት እኮ learning ማለት ነው። When we learn how to do things better, that's all it is. When we do more with less, that's all it is. ያን ደግሞ ተማምረን ነው የትኛውም ሀገር ከሌላ ሀገር ጋር ኖሌጅ ተለዋውጦ ነው እና ያ ዘጋግተን ስለተቀመጠን አልነበረንም። massive progress in the last, I would say, 15 years, just aware በመሆን ብቻ ማለት ነው። Government policy starting to change. The kind of things we want መወራት ጀምረዋል at least. አንዳንዶቹም ፖሊሲዎች they're being passed. We're starting to see champions of entrepreneurship. እንፈራው ነው ነበር አንዳንዶቻችን እዚህ ሌባዎችን ፕሮሞት የሚያደርጉ ሰዎች ምናምን ሁሉ እንባለት ነው ጀመረ አካባቢ ክሎዝ ዶር ሚቲንግስ ላይ አንተ ከነዚህ ሌቦች ፕሮሞት ታደርጋለህ እንዴ መንግስት ብቻ ነው መስራት ያለበት የሚሉ ሰዎች ሁሉ ያጋጥሙኛል የመንግስት ቢሮዎች ውስጥ አሁን እንደዚህ አይነት ነገር አልሰማም at least. So አሁን ምንድነው no we understand businesses are important, entrepreneurs are important, but how do we stop them from stealing? I kid you not, no conversation በየመንግስት ቢሮ the assumption is እንፈልጋቸው ያስፈልጉናል ግን ካልተቆጣጠርናቸው ይዘርፉናል እና ምን ለማለት ነው from a really bad situation improve አድርገን መተናል ግን we have a long way to go still. And the ecosystem, so startups are coming up, young entrepreneurs like you guys እየመጣችሁ ነው ambitious እየሆናችሁ ነው ከኢትዮጵያ ውጭ እያያችሁ ነው ዘራፍ እያላችሁ ነው የኢስት አፍሪካም ያሉ ቢዝነስ ሞዴሎች ሰክሰስፉል የሆኑት እያያችሁ በራሳችሁ አቅም ሄዳችሁ ኢንኩቤተሮች ውስጥ across the continent ያሉ angels venture funds access እያደረጋችሁ ኢንቨስትመንት መውሰድ እየጀመራችሁ ነው you're learning from others. Your energy is what gives me hope. በጣም exciting የሚያደርገው ነገር ይሄ ፖሊሲ ላይ still ብዙ ይቀረናል. There are champions in government. That's also a new thing ለኔ በመንግስት አቅም እያነሳቸው overcome ማድረግ እያቃታቸው ነው እንጂ there are champions within government offices now that are pushing for your success. All of this is progress. What I would love to see change is, I mean, in one word would be the startup law. እሱ ፓስ ቢያደርግ በጣም ብዙ አድቫንቴጆች ይኖሩታል። እኛ as a venture fund right now it's impossible ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ሬጂስተር ማድረግ. So we have to be a foreign company just to be able to work with you guys. I don't see what the point is. We're still going to work with you anyways. Macro picture ላይ there's so many risks. Tax is a big problem. Venture funds and angel investors need to be able to write off their losses. Expense ማድረግ መቻል አለባቸው. That's what encourages risk money to come. አይደለም? አሁን ባለው environment we can't do that. ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ so 10 ኢንቨስት አድርገንኛ maybe ሁለቱ ሊሆን ይችላሉ really successful ነው 8 ሁሉ ሲያደርገው why can't we expense it off? ሌላ ሀገር እንደዛ ነው የሚደረገው. We should be able to do that. Try explaining that to ሀገር ውስጥ ላይ. That's not going to happen. እነዚህ ችግሮች ይይዙናል. እነዚህ ችግሮች they also not allow us to raise local funds. Let me tell you how much interest there is in local currency. በብር ፋንድ ሬዝ ለማድረግ ወይ ህገ ወጥ ሆነን መስራት አለብን ወይ የሆነ ኢምፕሮቫይዝድ የሆነ ሲስተም ፈጥረን መሆን አለበት። ሎካል ፋንደርስ ግን አሉ በብር ኢንቨስት ማድረግ የሚፈልጉ. So the amount of risk capital coming to you guys እንዲጨምር ሊያደርጉ የሚችሉ and interest ያላቸው local business people አሉ ግን unfortunately እሱን ወደ መሬት ለማውረድ the legal environment is still not there.
The next question is about us too. So sector the tech industry, agriculture, logistics, so I think tech is the new favorite of investors. It's lean, it grows fast, so ጥያቄው የሚሆነው የትኛው ሴክተር ነው is the best for personal ሊሆን ይችላል, generally as a rule ሊሆን ይችላል, and which one is incredibly difficult?
Which ones are easy, which ones are more difficult? I think none of them are easy, to be honest. It's a fight. ሁሉም sector like successful ለመሆን ግን because the easier ones, the more you worry about defensibility. So some companies, some sectors, it's easier to take off, which also means the copycats and competitors, it's going to be easy for them to come in and not crowd out the market. ግን በእኛ በኩል ግን every business has to have a purpose. And that purpose is besides making money. There has to be a purpose. The money comes because you serve that purpose. So, lenya, that's important. So the first thing is the kind of problems you solve societally, but ትልቅ issues መሆናቸው important ነው. Now that ensures it's also profitable. ትንሽ roundabout ነገር ነው. ሌላ ጊዜ ያወራዋል። ይሄ passionate topic of mine. Some former precisers እዚህ ማያቸው አሉ. I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about this a lot. By the way, don't get confused by that. It's the most important thing. Serving a customer, solving the problem of your customer is the purpose of your business. You get rewarded with the profits because you do that well. The business's job is making money ካላችሁ ትሸወዳላችሁ. Again, I'm being controversial, I know. ሌላ ጊዜ explain አደርገዋለሁ. ሰፊ ጊዜ የሚፈጅ ስለሆነ ማለት ነው። ይሄ ወዴት ለመሄድ ስለፈለኩኝ ነው። Are you solving a massive problem right now that creates real value for people የሚለው ነገር interesting ነው ለኛ። So ሴክተሮች ስንመለከት አሁን ለምሳሌ fintech space we find very interesting. ለምን? There is so much unbanked population. ቁጥሮቹን ትሰማቸዋላችሁ። ስንት ሰው ነው ሎን የወሰደ ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ? I don't know. ስንት? 300,000. 120 ሚሊዮን ህዝብ ያለበት ሀገር ላይ 300,000. It tells you how many people cannot run their farms because they don't have working capital for their farms. ዘር መግዣ ያጣሉ፣ ምን ያለ, all of this stuff. This is a massive problem to solve. Is a sector that's seeing a lot of innovation, and there are workable models that you could copy and adopt from other countries. Personally, I like this space. If you're not paying attention, there is the Africa FinTech Forum happening in Washington, D.C. right now. It's online also. FinTech, so what you I recommend. It's quite an inspirational sector. So we like that sector. Lelau is transport and logistics sector. It's one of the priorities for us. The amount of value you can create in that space is lost on most people, but it's massive. The amount of price that's added into end products, goods and services, because of how expensive logistics is, because of the fact that buyer and seller is not efficiently working in that sector. It's a big sector. So we like that. And ሌሎች ሀገሮችም ላይ እናያለን። early success stories ከተመለከታቸው across Africa, early takeoff-ዎቹ እዚህ አካባቢ ብዙ አሉ. So we like that. Platform businesses in general, tech-enabled buyer and seller የሚያገናኙ or e-commerce platforms በእኛ ሀገር ደረጃ ብዙ ትራክሽን የለም እስካሁን፣ ግን አንዳንድ ኢንትረስቲንግ ስታርታፖች እየመጡ ነው። that's interesting space. As you can tell, it requires very little of your capital. It takes a lot more of your ingenuity, takes your business leadership and your business acumen more than your capital to grow such businesses እና exponentially ማደግ ስለሚችሉ ማለት ነው። Where we would love to do a lot but find difficult is agri-tech. Ag-tech, እኔም ብጠይቁኝ, I would put it number one as an interest area. But to grow, to come up with a business model that adds a lot of value, but also grow fast, that's going to require a lot of heavy lifting. That doesn't mean we're not interested. Like I said, my heart is there. I'm very interested. My partners are also interested. But finding that scalable business there has proven to be quite difficult. Health, I think, is somewhere in the middle. Education, somewhere in the middle. I think those are doable. If there are any other sectors you want to ask me, I'm also happy to respond.
And then we'll move on to the questions from our audience. So አሁን ኢንቨስተሮች አላችሁ ስታርታፖች አሉ ሁለቱ ይፈላለጋሉ ግን መሀል ላይ there's confusion like a blind date you know like ሁለታችሁም ትፈላለጋላችሁ ግን እንዴት ነው approach የሚደረገው especially from the startup side ይፈራል you know like what if it's bad what if there's rejection ብዙ ነገሮች አሉና can you tell them anything that can help them better select you guys to be their business partners for however long?
Great question. It's really a relationship you're looking for. Yeah? There's a friend of mine always says, business partner ማለት ትዳር ማለት ነው. I'm married, I have 2 kids. I know what that's like. So, ስታገቡና business partner ስትይዙ similarities ካለው you want to date. So your analogy is not bad. መታወቁ መጀመሪያ አትፍሩ ምንም worst case scenario is they reject you or they say no, right? አንዳንድ ጊዜ ይሄንን exercise ሰርታችሁ ታውቃላችሁ? If something makes you nervous, by the way, try this exercise. ቁጭ በሉና ጻፉ the worst possible things in the world. But you realize ቁጭ just died, you're not going to die. So, and then you just go for it. So worst thing that happens is the person says no, or maybe ignore you, or whatever. That happens. It's real life. So learn how to get a positive response from them. ከዛ እየተማራችሁ አጻጻፋችሁ ነው approachአችሁ ነው. Did you send a message on LinkedIn? Did you look for them in person? Whatever it is, right? Good no is not the end of it. No ስትባሉ አትመለሱ. There's a lot that could go wrong. Maybe the person didn't understand. Maybe we didn't understand what you have in mind. Maybe we don't understand the sector. We don't. Maybe you only I mean, you know, we're just like you. We all live within limitations. We have time limitations. We have knowledge limitations, experience limitations. All of that. In fact, let me quote another book. Never split the difference in መጽሐፍ I'm sure ስታርታፖች አካባቢ ብዙ አለ so ናምባባችሁ when he says no is not the end of negotiation ይላል no is the beginning of negotiation no ስትባሉ in fact you should get ready to start the conversation in fact ከዚህ ያልፍና ሰውየው ምን ይላል he was a former FBI hostage negotiator okay so his insights are quite interesting he says in fact አለ ኖ አስብሏቸው መጀመሪያ ስትጀምሩ negotiation ላይ ኖ ምንም unrelated የሆነ psychological ነው ነገር ይኸውና ኖ የሚያስብል ጥያቄ ጠይቋቸውና ኖ ካሉ በኋላ negotiation ጀምሩት it goes that far ምን ለማለት ፈልጌ ነው don't be afraid ምንም የሚያስፈራ ነገር የለውም ማለት ነው the worst thing that happens if no ተባላችሁ that actually starts negotiation ስለዚህ አትፍሩ contact at any be persistent continue to build your business don't wait investors don't like to see a company stuck in one place for a very long time they want to know that you know we understand our value add is not that much ከናንተ ካላችሁበት it sounds like a lot አይደል but it's not that much እኛ ደግሞ what we want to see is that you can take this company to the next level with whatever resources you have that you can raise money from others also, not just from us. Despite what a lot of people think, venture capitalists don't always just compete. We also collaborate. Risk reduce ያደርግልናል, capacity collect ያደርግልናል, spread ያደርግልናል የኛን risk, smaller amounts into different businesses ማድረግ ማለት ነው እና we work well together. So እነዚህ capabilities እንዳሏችሁ ማወቅ ይፈልጋል. So don't stay still. Make sure you're acting. Create a fear of missing out in front of the investor. You're doing so well out there. I see some startups are so good social media ላይ በስመ አብ አንድ ሰሞን ግሮት ኤንድ ትራንስፎርሜሽን ፕላን ትዝ ይላችኋል ጂቲፒ አንድ ፕሮጀክት 15 ጊዜ ሪፖርት ይደረግ ነበር። እንደዚህ ታቅዷል፣ እንደዚህ ታስቧል፣ እቅዱ ወጥቷል። ባለስልጣኖች ተሰብስበው ስለሚሰራው እንትን ዲስከስ አደረጉ ምናምን like 15 ኒውስ ምናምን before the project was finished. Do that. It builds up momentum. እና ኢንትረስታችን ፒክ ያደርጋል አለ we're human beings as well. So when we see others interested in you, the chances of us being more interested is going to grow. Sounds cosmetic, but it works. ምን ቸገራችሁ ከሰራ? I will probably deny if I'm not on social media ምናምን ሌላ ሰው ከጠየቀኝ ይክዳለሁ። But your target should be build a relationship. Study your investors. Don't go in bed with just anybody that comes in with money. What else am I getting from them? I'm sure you know this. የምታውቁትን ነገር ነው መነግራችሁ ያለሁት ግን we're looking for you. እናንተን ስናይኛ we're saying can these people do this? Can people do that? Good leadership skill አላቸው ወይ? Can they have the right mindset of growth? ቅድም አንዱ ያላልኩት ነገር if the promoter themselves one entrepreneur owns 90-100% of the business, woo, that's a tough one. Don't do that. Have business partners, people who will share the risk in the work with you also. Not, the wrong mindset is, I don't want to share what this business is going to make. Because that person that shares, potentially serves your profits is going to also share the risks and the work. አብራችሁ መሄድ ካልቻላችሁ none of us are going to build anything meaningful by ourselves. Just እዚሁ ላይ እንድታውቁት የምፈልገው ነገር ማለት ነው። So እኒህ አይነት ነገሮችን communicate upfront. We have a technology partner or a whatever partner. I have my co-founders. I mean, again, you know these things በደንብ አስረግጬ ልንገራችሁ ብዬ ነው እና ኮንታክት ስታደርጉ እኛ እነዚህ ነገሮች እንደምንፈልገው ሁሉ እናንተ ምንድን ነው የምትፈልጉት? አሁን እኛ we want to know ለምሳሌ if you're in the logistics business, I want to know why are you in the logistics business? Why do I have a reason to know that you can be successful እዛ ቢዝነስ ላይ ኤክስፒሪየንስ አላቸው ወይ ሰክሰስፉሊ ሰርታቸዋል? ምንም ነገር አናውቀውም እኛ ቴክኖሎጂስት ነን። ያጋጥመኛል ቴክኖሎጂ is not going to put food on the table። ይቅርታ I love technology. Technology is an enabler. It's going to enable you to do business out there. It's not the end product in most cases. In most cases, it is something that allows for real world stuff to be delivered more efficiently. So, እናንተ ደግሞ in return, you want to study the investor. Trust me, no ማለት መልመድ is one of the things you want. Even አምጥቼ ገንዘብ ብሰጣቸው ራሱ no ማለት መቻል አለባቸው. If you don't like me, if you don't like my attitude, if you don't like my worldview, or if you don't think I can add value to your business. What else do I mean, $500,000, $200,000 ምናምን ኢንቨስት አድርጌ ቢዝነሱን ኮንትሮል ላድርገው የምላችሁ ከሆነ don't say yes, say no. የምትፈልጉትን በደንብ አውቃችሁ ሾርት ሊስት ካደረጋችሁ and I'm assuming you have such a thriving startup now that you have choices አይደለም ኢንቨስተር ቾይስ አላችሁ 4-5 are willing to invest, which one should I pick እያላችሁኝ ነው ብዬ አስቤ ነው አይደል? So then start the conversation, build a relationship. ስለ ቢዝነስ አውሯቸው, go to lunch with the investors or with us, I should say. And the more you build a relationship and you build the comfort, the more likely you'll succeed together. In the beginning, because we have to look at, a few investments ለማድረግ we have to look at like 100. Maybe 5, 6, 7 investments ለማድረግ we have to look at like 100. So what our mentality is going to be is I have to do quick analysis መጀመሪያ to weed out the ones that don't meet my criteria. Remember, I'm human. I could be wrong. ያ ሁሉ criteria አልፌ በጣም ኤክሳይትድ ሆኜ ኢንቨስት ያደረኩበት አንተ ቢዝነስ might flunk on their face እና 30 ሰከንድ አይቼ የማይሆንም ያልኳቸው could be incredibly successful. That's the risk we take. So engage, learn about us, build a relationship. Don't take no for an answer. Be persistent. That's what you're going to need to be successful anyways. Persistence ስትሆኑ in our mind we're like, here's somebody who's going to succeed. ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ የትኛውን ቢሮ ሄዳችሁ ነገ ተመልሳችሁ ነው የምትባሉት አይደለም እንዴ? በዛው ከቀራችሁ I mean you might as well go do something else. Yeah?